Good morning. Today is January the 11th, and it is 2023, and it is 10:02 a.m. Central Standard Time. We are conducting interviews via Zoom video conference, La Jolla ISD Board Trustee, and speaking with, if you would please state your name and position.
Alda Benavides, School Board Trustee.
Also present are SIU investigators. My name is Brad Brown.
And my name is Teresa Schutte. Good morning, Dr. Benavides.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Katie Moshe.
Good morning.
And again, thank you for meeting with us this morning. We're here today due to multiple complaints filed with TEA alleging that members of the La Jolla ISD Board of Trustees and Administration engaged in fraud, conflict of interest, and contract procurement violations. The La Jolla ISD received a notice of special investigations from TEA on March 21st, 2022. This inquiry will allow us to gather information regarding allegations pertaining to those mentioned above. During this interview, you will be asked a series of questions that require an answer to the best of your knowledge. If you do not understand a question, please advise me so I can rephrase it or clarify the question. We have allotted 1 hour for this interview, and we will stick to that time frame. As an effort to document your responses as accurately as possible, this interview is being recorded. Do you give your consent to allow this recording to continue?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And Mr. Ramirez, if you will, because you are the legal representation there, if you would please identify yourself as well.
Yes, Eden Ramirez, Legal Counsel, La Jolla Independent School District.
All right, thank you. Dr. Benavides, thank you again. Just have a few questions. And for our background, can you tell us how long you have been a trustee on the board?
I've been a trustee since November of 2020.
Okay. And it's my understanding you also have you were an employee, you were the superintendent prior to that too as well, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. How many years were you the superintendent down there?
From September of 2006 to June of 2019.
Okay. So my first question has to do with basically the biggest reason we're down there is because of the trustees, the 2 trustees and the 3 administrators pleading guilty to those various federal charges. Talk to me, if you will, about your initial response, your initial reaction to hearing that news and getting that information.
With the employees, I was really shocked that was going on with the employees. With the board members, I really didn't know, but I just the partnership that they had with one particular company caused me to wonder what was going on. But I didn't know anything in specific. So when I realized, or when that came out, I want to use the word I was shocked. I just didn't expect that type of involvement and wrongdoing to that extent.
Mm-hmm. When you say, could you clarify a little bit for me about the relationship between that trustee and the company? Can you clarify that for me?
The company that I'm referring to is PSI.
Okay.
I don't know. I just didn't get good vibes with PSI from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And they had one in particular, Mr. Garza, had very, very close relationships with that company. And so that makes you wonder. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I had no specifics. I didn't know what was going on. But that I was surprised that he was that involved at that point.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about these seem to be, not seem to be, they are connected with the energy savings projects that went on. If you would, and if I'm not mistaken, you were the superintendent at the time when phase 1 started.
Correct.
How did La Jolla ISD get involved and determine that these projects were needed? What kind of information were you provided as a superintendent or there with these?
It came as an energy savings project, And they were gung-ho about it. And I always felt like, I told them, well, if this is that good, why don't we try it with maybe 5 schools? And if we see that that it does pay off, then we can do the rest of the schools. I had already tried with another board to knock it down and do my best to not get it, and it didn't pass. And then they continued like wanting to pursue it, and it was not my. I remember publicly in a board meeting saying, my suggestion that let's just do a few schools and let's try it and let's see what happens. And if not, we can, if it does prove, to be energy savings, then we can do it. But that's how it came. They just came, like they already had the information. So that's how it came to me. Like it was an energy savings and you couldn't say no to that.
So when you say they, can you identify those folks?
Well, I'm thinking that the trustees, because originally
Okay.
it was, and there's been so many years, but
Right.
originally it was another group of trustees, and then in 2016, when these guys came on, then it was them. It was,
Okay.
Mr. Garza and them. But before the first time around, it was another, Mr. JJ Garza, Mr. Oscar Salinas, it was them. And then it didn't happen. And so then when it was proposed again, it did happen. And that was, like I said, after 2016, when they got on the board.
So talk to me a little bit about what was involved in those projects. There was a phase 1 and phase 2, but talk to me about what was, and I know it's been a while, but to the best of your knowledge, can you kind of talk to me about what kinds of projects took place in the district?
Okay, in phase 1, it was going to be the stadium lights, and we were going to have the very best lights, in South Texas. And it was going to be changing all the lights in all the classrooms in La Joya ISD, all the lights. So that was phase 1. And it was a huge project and a major undertaking. And it was going to, I think the cost was like $11 million or something like that. And so it was a big investment to be making. But that went through. They knew how I felt about PSI, and so there was talk about phase 2. But when I said at the beginning of the interview that I was there till June of 2019, on record I was there till June of 2019. But in February is when they chose. I'll quote, they were going to go in another direction. And so they agreed at that time to pay me till the end of June. And so that's the reason why on paper I'm until June, but I was actually gone at the end of February, March 1st or something.
Okay.
From the district.
Okay.
And when I left, there was talk about the phase 2.
Right. So talk to me about, you said it was $11 million in that phase 1. How did the district pay for that?
I don't recall if we went into how we were gonna fund that, or if it came exactly from fund balance. At that time, we had a hefty fund balance. The district was doing really well. And so it may have been just fund balance at that time.
Okay. So there was no was there any consideration of going out to the public for a bond election or anything for a lot of these improvements in school things?
No.
So PSI, you said you had your concerns with PSI. Was that the only company that you dealt with when you decide these energy savings project? Was that the only company available to do business with for these projects? Or talk to me about how the contract procurement process with PSI? during that time?
I'm sure there was other companies. I mean, I can't name other companies, but I'm
Mhm.
sure there was other companies. But the company that we were dealing with was PSI from the very beginning.
Okay, okay. And that was because of the trustees, or was that the business department and your administrators saying, hey, we need to look at this, or do you remember?
I don't recall how exactly it originated, but I know that it started with the trustees.
Okay. All right. So the arrangement with PSI was to do these energy savings projects. How were the contractors, subcontractors selected to do those various projects in the school? You said the first phase was doing all the lights and upgrading the lights and everything like that. How were those contractors, or did PSI do the work themselves?
I don't know how they were selected. I just know about the company, and then they go about getting their subcontractors and all that. I don't know.
Mhm. Okay. As far as phase two, now I know you are gone as the superintendent, and you're not on the board yet. Are you familiar with anything phase two projects at all?
I had been in conversations about phase two, and the conversations included wanting to redo all the HVAC systems. And I remember telling them I own a two-story home, and I gave them an example, and I told them that if one of my units needs to be replaced at home, I don't replace both. You know, I just replace the one that needs to be replaced. And so I was trying to discourage that whole big project again, because I felt that I didn't know at that time it was going to include so much, but I just knew that if the other one had included that much money, this one would probably include that much or more.
Mhm.
Not being on the board during that time and not being the superintendent, I did realize quickly when we heard about it in the community that phase two was being proposed. And then all of a sudden, and I knew what they were doing. I knew what they were doing when they were including the fences and including the gates and including the tracks. I remember just thinking to myself, they're doing that so that the community can buy into it and it can go through, because it was presented in the name of safety. It was presented in the name of everything was good. I mean, you know, it was good for the kids, the middle school tracks and all that. And so I knew in my head, you know, why they were proposing it like that. And sure enough, it passed.
Mhm. So in phase one and phase two both, the district hired an owner's representative. I think the first phase was J&R Engineering phase one, and then M. Garcia Engineering was phase two. I know you probably don't, you weren't there, you probably don't know about phase two, but phase one, talk to me about that particular role for that engineering firm. If the district hired PSI, why did they need an owner's representative as well? Do you remember any of those conversations?
I just remember telling them, I had been the superintendent, and when I became superintendent, I inherited two bonds that had already passed. And so we needed to build about 10 schools, and we didn't have enough money, because it was at the time that the steel had gone it was very high. The prices were very high. So we had to pass another bond to be able to complete everything that had been promised. But I remember telling them that it was very important that we complete everything that we had been promised, or else La Jolla ISD would never be able to pass another bond if it came to be. So that's how. Tell me the part of the question again, so I can.
The owner's representative, the engineering
Okay,
firm that you
okay,
hired as
yes,
the owner's
okay.
representative.
I wanted to get back to that.
Okay.
When that happened, the reason I told you about the 10 schools is because I told them we were able to build 10 schools without having any representative in between, like no middleman, no person. So why can't we do this again? Because we've done it. We've already done it. We've done it. So I didn't agree with that, but that was something that the board wanted. I don't recall which board members, but it was something that they wanted.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about the district's policies and practices regarding employees and trustees conducting business within the district. I know that some of the employees were vendors and companies that they did business with the district. Talk to me about those policies and practices and what that entailed.
I always just used to tell them, you can do it. You just have to do a disclosure form. You have to be, if you have any gain or any family member has, any gain, you have to do a disclosure form. But one that I remember in particular that I told various times, and he refused to fill out a form, was Mr. Cantu, was Alex Cantu. He just said that his wife had told him not to fill it out, and I said, well, I know that that's required. You need to fill out a disclosure form, and he didn't want to. And then even the secretary, the board secretary, tried to get him to complete it, and he said no. And so he didn't complete it, not when I was there.
So what company was that? What company was he
Read and
involved
feed
in?
for the read and feed. He was involved with that. And so he needed to do that form, but he didn't do it.
Okay. So talk to me about his relationship with the read and feed and well, let's back up. Let's start, discuss the read and feed program. What did that entail? What were its roles and responsibilities, the district's roles and responsibilities? Can you talk to me about that program?
The read and feed was going to be an after-school program where they were going to provide meals for the kids. There was a partnership between Mr. Alex Guajardo and Mr. Alex Cantu. And they took care of it after school. I didn't get into the specifics of how they were running it, but I know that in certain schools it was being held, and there was a personal benefit to this trustee. And so that was, I mean, I knew that because they had that partnership.
Mm-hmm. So what was Mr. Guajardo's position in the district at the time?
I want to say at that time he was athletic director.
Okay. All right. So they were partners in this endeavor,
Yes.
or they were okay. All right.
Yes. They started off as partners.
Okay.
Or they worked together. I don't know what relationship they had, but they were working together.
So were any district employees other than Mr. Guajardo involved in providing these services, these the after school program where they would feed, and I'm assuming tutoring and things like that?
I understood just feeding, but I don't know if there was other employees or who the employees were for the after school program. I don't know who they were.
Was there any did Read and Feed pay the district, or the district pay Read and Feed anything, or?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. So as far as this relationship, do you know how Read and Feed was compensated? How they, obviously, if they were in business, they had to pay employees and things like that. Did you get into any of that at all?
I just know that depending on the number of kids that they would feed, I imagine that they would get reimbursed, through through their company or their program.
Okay.
And that's how they paid the people, the people that were working.
So you said you knew Mr. Cantu was receiving a benefit. What benefit was that? Was he being paid then, or was he?
I didn't know at that time. Later on, it came out that he was getting paid as a consultant, but that came out later when all this thing
Right.
just. But at that time, I didn't know how he was. But I figured if you have a partnership, then you've got to be getting something.
Mhm. Okay. All right, the next area I want to talk about is the district health insurance plan. If you could talk to me a little bit about the benefits for employees and what that plan entails, who is it with, so on and so forth. Let's start there.
The district has a very, very good health insurance. I used to call it the Cadillac version because it covers, it's just a very hefty plan. We're self-funded as a district.
Mhm.
And so there's always been as soon as 2016 came around, they wanted to switch at that time. If I remember correctly, Mr. Bob Trevino had it, but when that happened, they wanted to switch it to Ruth Villarreal, and they did. They did switch it at that time. The only thing that was very alarming to me and to our CFO at the time was that they issued out an 8-year contract, and we had never done that. And so I just, at that time, told the board president, and if I remember correctly, it was Mr. Salinas. I told him, I'm not going to sign that contract because we've never given an 8-year contract.
Mhm.
And so Mr. Salinas signed the contract.
Okay. Did he say why it was an 8-year contract? Do you remember that conversation? Or?
No, they had already made that decision.
Mhm. So who is eligible to receive those health insurance benefits?
All the employees
Mhm.
had always been eligible, and then of course, if you can buy your individual, the individuals get it for free, right? The
Right.
employees,
Mhm.
but you can buy for your family, or you can buy any additional that you want, but the employees get it for free. I was asked, and we were asked, the CFO and myself, we were asked if the board members could get it. And I had Mr. Vela at that time research it, and Mr. Vela said no. And so I told him no, that we could not, that it had been researched in the past when at that time it was Mrs. Filomena Leo was the superintendent, and we had found a letter through another attorney, Mr. Guerrero, and he had said that no, that they would not recommend that we use or that trustees get the insurance. So we responded that they could not get it, but we were overridden because one of our attorneys that is working with the district still and was working at that time said that they could. At that time, it was only Mr. Cantu and Ms. Nereida. No, I'm sorry. It was only Mr. Cantu and Claudia Ochoa, because they were the board members that were on at that time, and they both got the insurance.
Mhm.
And I documented that the attorney had given the go-ahead for them to get it. We did run into a problem with them paying. The CFO, Mr. Vela, would tell me, you need to tell them they need to pay, and they need to pay. And so I was constantly having to remind them that they had to pay. I even recall at one point that we had a return check from Mrs. Ochoa's husband And she very bluntly told me, well, I don't take care of that. He takes care of that. But in the short period that they did have it when I was there, we did have problems collecting. And I don't know at the end, I don't know if they were up, they were paid up or
Mhm.
what the situation was, but I know that when I was there, that was a problem.
So, so
Go ahead.
they were paying for their families to be on there. Am I assuming that
Yes,
correctly? Okay.
yes.
So had they not paid for their families, theirs would have been free?
I
They
don't know.
would it have paid at all, or?
I don't know. I thought that they were just paying, for themselves and the family.
Okay,
But they were doing it through the district. That's how I took it.
okay. So you said that employees, unless they upgrade or have families or spouses and things like that, it's free for them. Their plan is free. How
Yes.
is that? Is that funded through the general fund then, or is that funded through premiums from other people, or how is that self-funded set up?
It's a combination. It's a
Okay.
combination because it kind of right now because of the pandemic and because of serious illnesses, there have been times where the general fund has to provide some money in there. But normally it takes care of it takes care of itself. But that hasn't been the case in some years. In some years, the general fund has had to kick in some money.
Mhm. Okay. Katie and Teresa, have you thought of anything that you need to ask, or?
The only follow-up question I have is, do you recall what the attorney's name was that kind of overrid your response to the fact that they could not have insurance? Do you remember the attorney's name that allowed that?
Mr. Jerry Munoz.
Okay, thank you.
And you said you had documentation for that. Was that a memo from him? Was that a email from him? Was that?
I believe there's an email, and then on my memo, I just put, as per Mr. Jerry Munoz, the trustees are going to be because the business office needed something in writing to allow them to get it.
Okay.
And so but if I remember correctly, there was an email from him, and then there's my follow-up short memo that just said that he had allowed it.
So that would be, you said about 2016, correct?
They came on 2016, so it probably didn't happen right away because they came on in November. So it
Okay.
may have been 2017.
Okay, okay. You wouldn't happen to have a copy that you would be willing to share with us?
No, but
No?
I understand the other agency that's investigating the district.
Hmm.
I understand that they have that.
Okay. All right. Let me just give me a second here going down my list. Just kind of double checking. I've got a couple board minutes from June and July of 2019. So you weren't on the board, you weren't the superintendent then, so I
Correct.
probably would have been privy to any of that. So I just want to make sure that's the only other area that I looked at. Questions you may have of me, anything that you may want to tell us that you thought we were going to ask that we didn't ask. The other thing I would like to ask is if, as we get to listening to these and as we go through more documents, if there are other clarifying questions that come up, would you be amenable to meeting with us again and possibly sitting down and having that conversation about those questions that we may have?
Definitely. I wouldn't have a problem meeting. And I guess my only, I don't have a question, I have comments. I feel that our district really needs intervention. I'm concerned about the district, and that is precisely why I ran for the board. I felt that as a superintendent, I couldn't stop some things, and so therefore, I thought that as a board member, I would be able to do more things, but it takes a lot when you're a board member. There's a lot of negotiating and a lot of persuasion and all that to be able to get things done.
You're talking to a
But-
former high school principal, ma'am, so I not on the superintendent level, but I totally understand that negotiating and things like
Yeah,
that. I totally understand.
So I feel that our district needs intervention, and they need intervention fast.
Mhm.
I'm concerned about what's going on right now. A lot of political promises were made, and an example of that is that if they voted for a certain group, they would get an additional $2,500 stipend. And while I know that it can be done and it's okay to do retention stipends and all that, I'm concerned about the welfare of the district because right now the district has about 26 million in ESSER funds that they're using to cover positions for staff. And so while I knew that it was okay and that it could be done, I was very adamantly opposed to doing those stipends because, you know, 5 million something can cover some positions at least for another year.
Mhm.
And the district being the largest employer in our community, and some of our people are auxiliary staff, and so things like that, you know, that were promised and are being carried out. And I'm just concerned about what else is going to come up in the next few months. I've been told that there's going to be a lot of changes in the next 2 months, and so I'm just worried about the district, and I feel that intervention needs to be provided very, very quickly.
So changes as far as the board is making changes, the administration's making changes, what, can you elaborate on, or you know?
Just that there was going to be a lot of changes in the next 2 months,
Mhm.
and so and the one that said that was Mr. Alex Cantu.
Okay.
And so I'm just concerned. I'm just concerned about what's going to happen and what changes are going to be made, and just the overall. We worked very hard for, you know, a good 13 years to build the district up and build the fund balance, and now there's concerns with monies, and there's just a lot of concerns with the district.
So you said you need help and intervention, need it fast. What does that look like for you? Or what would that look like?
For me, I would say definitely a conservator that is, I don't know if the word is strict, but I'm just saying one that really can knock some sense into. And not that I have anything against young people, because I admire young people that are wanting to do, but I feel that they need to have more insight in the overall big picture, and sometimes they don't.
Mhm.
And we may be driving our district to the ground if there's no intervention. And so I'm thinking that it's very much needed in the district.
Mhm. Okay. Anything else you can think of?
No, just that I was not familiar with any of those companies that are listed. You know,
Mhm.
I was not familiar. I was familiar with just a couple of them. You know, PSI being one, and Read and Feed being another one,
Okay.
and the RGV Red Light. Those were the companies that I was familiar with. The others,
So
I was.
RGV Red Light, what did they do? for the district?
They participated in purchasing of the vehicles,
Okay,
and that was done when I was there, but they weren't around me. I was not included in any of the meetings.
okay.
But luckily, I had loyal employees who would tell me this is what's going on and this is what. So,
So what would they tell you? Do you mind me
like
asking, or?
that we were gonna get a whole bunch, and that was also something. It was easy to pass because it was a brand new fleet of cars, police cars, and a brand new fleet of maintenance trucks and things like that. So of course it was very supported, and but I was not included in those meetings, and so I thought I'd add that because the other companies I wasn't familiar with at all.
So if you weren't included in those meetings, who was making those decisions?
They included, for example, the director of maintenance, because he was, overseeing, and then the police chief, and then
I'm sorry, can you put names to those?
the police chief was Mr. Raul Gonzalez, Chief Raul Gonzalez, Mr. Alfredo Vela, the CFO, Mr. Danny Garza, who was in charge of oversaw the maintenance department.
Okay.
So
Are those people still there? Do you know?
Mr. Vela is no longer there, and Danny's no longer there.
Okay,
The chief is still.
Mr. Gonzalez is, right? Chief Gonzalez.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's really all I have, other than to say thank you again for your time. Thank you again for your service as a superintendent, as a trustee. I know a lot of times both of those positions, even though you're paid to be the superintendent, it's a handful. And you are to be commended, like I said, as a former high school administrator. I saw how hard superintendents worked, and not that I'm not a hard worker, but I saw other things that they had to do too. So I had no desire to be a superintendent. So my hat is off to anybody that can be a superintendent and be in that position that long. So thank you for your service there. Thank you for getting involved in the community with La Jolla ISD, and because your knowledge as far as school background goes a long way on a school board, I'm sure. Even though I know sometimes it feels like you might be butting your head against the wall, but we thank you for that too as well. Not thank you for butting your head against the wall, but thank you for attempting to
I get
to
it.
do
I
the
get
right
it.
thing. So we appreciate your time, and I think that's all we have, and we hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
And I'll be available if you have other questions.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
All right. Thank you. We'll be in touch.
All right, thanks.
All right.